Hello, everyone. Happy Tuesday and welcome to Talk About It Tuesday. I'm Tosca Di Matteo, founder of Tosca Coaching and Consulting, and I'm super excited to have my guest on today, Priscilla Guasso, who's an author and an advocate for Latinas, and she wrote the book Latinas Rising in HR. Welcome. She's going to be joining in just a moment. And here she is, so I'm going to bring her on. We're going to get this party started. I'm excited. Welcome, Caribbean Fitness, to the conversation. We're talking about how defining moments lead to resilience. We're just waiting for Priscilla to join. She's coming on right now. Hello.
Hi, Tosca. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Great. I'm glad everything's going great with technology. It's a fantastic way to start.
Yes, and you are just like radiating. I'm already feeling your energy. I'm so excited to have you on the show today.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. Thanks for inviting me to your platform. More than
Oh my
anything.
gosh. My honor. And I just want to acknowledge, I know it's been a hard couple days for you, and I'm sending you lots of love, and yeah, I'm glad that we're still able to have this conversation, and probably a good way to honor. Yeah, yeah. So look, again, we're talking about, right, how defining moments drive resilience. And, I just wanted to start off by letting people know a little bit that, when I first met you, it was through your generosity, that I was going to be interviewed for an article about actually how to get promoted, about career advancement, and I wanted more insight into women of color experiences to build upon my own like experiences and perspective, and like you just jumped on it. And so I am not surprised in terms of like what you're doing right now. It's just like, of course she's doing that. And of course she raised her hand out of all the people that could have raised their hand. So um, it's your generosity that is leading to this moment and this connection. So that just speaks to who you are, your character. And I'm thrilled to know you and thrilled to have this conversation. Um, so I want to pass it over to you to share with the audience about you, whatever you want to share about your story, your journey, what brings you here today. It's just an open book just to let people into your soul a little bit.
Well, Jessica, I love that you've opened up your platform for so many different voices, right, to come forward and share who they are and really what makes them tick, right, when in a good way and in a bad way, right, just kind of what motivates us. And personally, I consider myself, and more as I look into the word, as a human catalyst, and that mean that in so many different ways, from what I do personally to what I do professionally, and how I help others. And again, not looking for the recognition. It's more of how is it that we're helping one another to create that spark and create something that is going to just generate even greater leaders around us, right? I think we're in a time, and always, where it's important and it's a responsibility as women, as people, as a person of color. I just feel like it's our responsibility to really think about how we're building future leaders and inspiring them to come forward, right? Because we spoke a little bit about this before, about legacy, right? That I think a lot about. And again, not of what do I get to take with me. As you mentioned earlier, I lost a really close aunt of mine. And it's even more, again, why today was just so great to talk with you, because it's exactly what I've been experiencing is, um, what do we do after we leave this earth, right? What happens? What do we leave here behind? And how are we making those around us and those lives that we touch, whether it's for a moment or for a longer time, better than how it came to us, right? And so that started as something that's always been in me. And over time, I built my career in human resources and loved what I do. And I still do love human resources so much. But to my HR people that are out there, make sure you take care of yourself, right? And I only say that because of my own experience, right? Where I didn't take that time to do that. And we can talk a little bit more about that. And now I'm at a place after having taken some time off where doing contrary to what I think we're always told, right? Keep moving up in your career, keep focusing, and then losing that element of, oh, how am I taking care of myself, right? And I started
Mm.
hearing things from my colleagues to family that it finally resonated. It's like, all right, Priscilla, if you're really going to continue helping others, you've got to focus on you first. And that's a hard thing to do when you're built to want to help others, right? You feel good. It makes you feel good. But after a while, like a battery, it just your battery energy goes down, and you need to recharge it, right? So yeah, but a little bit about me. I'm a wife. I am a sister, a daughter. I love to salsa dance. I'm an HR leader, and really now trying to work on a community. I'm a big community builder, and so I'm trying to use these skills in different ways, right, to help others around me.
Wow, yeah, oh my gosh. So much richness in that in that intro. I'm like, oh my gosh, where do we go? I think I think you bring up such a great point about taking care of ourselves as givers, and I think, women in particular have a tendency, and we have a tendency to overgive. And sometimes I think we don't even realize,
Mm-hmm.
and then all of a sudden we're depleted, like, right, there is no, like you said, juice in that battery. Um, and I feel like some people feel like they don't have a choice. You know what I mean? Like this is the way it is. Like it's so ingrained that like to even stop feels like impossible. Um, so I'm curious how if you had that, if that was if you hit that kind of mentality and how you overcame it, or you know, what enabled you to say, oh my gosh, I have got to fill my battery back up and really, really see it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for me, my biggest, I guess, my red flags around me, right, were my community, and when I say community, I mean the people that are closest to me, right, my family, my friends, my coworkers that become family, right, and so they're the ones that they started noticing a couple things that were a little different in me, and not drastic, right? They're just like, hey. Are you okay? And I'm like, yeah, everything's great. And I'm so used to being like, everything's fine, everything's
Mm,
fantastic, we move forward. But it got to a point where I just kept feeling and hearing, and I also started noticing it physically. I feel like this starts manifesting physically too if you're not okay. And I was gaining a lot of weight, and I just wasn't happy with what I was doing, and I felt like my energy was starting to get so low, and almost like I was trying so hard to keep a front when it used to be
mm,
so natural to do that, right? And so that really, if it wasn't for those around me that cared so much for me and were noticing little things in me, I don't know if I really would have listened to myself, right?
mm,
And so I also got to a place where I wanted to share more of. I felt this inner fire of wanting to do more, but at the same time being exhausted, right? And so it's like, well, how am I supposed to do this if I don't take care of myself? And so finally, I realized, you know what? I think first is what's going on with Priscilla, right? What does she need to do? And it came down to my health. It came down to, and when I say health, I mean that physically, spiritually, emotionally, and in my book, I actually that I launched in October of this past year, I share that the what hit me personally and made me realize I needed to take care of myself was we had my husband and I had two miscarriages.
mm,
And for any woman that goes through that, we all have defining moments. For me, that was mine that told me to halt and break really fast. And till this day, don't know why they happened, right? You don't always know why the miscarriages are there, but I truly believe now, in retrospect, it was to teach me to take a moment to pause and to take care of myself. And And it's odd because I even asked the doctors what happened, and they're like, we can't figure it out. We have no idea. And for someone like me, I need answers, right? So that's really hard. That's really hard to grasp. And so it took time, and that actually created a really defining moment for myself and my husband, because I wasn't okay with my mental health. It had really took a toll on me. And just like you go to the doctor when you break a bone or when you cut yourself really deeply, I needed to find a therapist to help me work through these emotions, to understand, or more so to get to a place where I was okay with what happened, right, and not having answers. And that was one of the most beautiful, toughest, but eye-opening moments that allowed me to then also address a lot of things that I had been working on personally and thinking what I needed, right, or what I wanted, and what was truly bringing joy to me, and just probably more than anything, challenging what I was doing. And so, to your question, right, it was that was probably I would say the biggest moment that I had, where it was like, all right, Priscilla, you only have one body, and you've got to take care of it. And if kids are in the future, which we don't know, right? It's not in my hands at this point. If it is in the future, you've got to take care of yourself today, and that's all you have, right? That's what you need to take care of. And so that became just and it's a continuous thing. I'm not sitting here saying I've hit my goals, but I'm working towards them, right? And I'm also working towards what is it that brings me joy in life from a career perspective. So it's a lot. It's growing in my career. I thought, oh, I have to do this. I need to be this, whatever it is, whether it was a chief HR officer or leading an organization or having a title or having a certain amount of pay. But as we get older, we realize those things don't bring you joy, right? They're great to have, and for some of us they do. But for the way I'm built, I've realized that it really is my relationship building and what I do with that, right? What stems from that. And so it's been a journey, and it's still going.
Never ends. Wow, so beautiful. Thank you for sharing all of that. And there's a couple things that I want to pause on and I think are so important, especially when I think about the Latina community, and communities of color in general. When you talked about you recognize the need to go to a therapist, because I think that there's a huge, still just a stigma or taboo to talk about this. And actually, I just want to shout out to Vanessa Santos, who published on her account yesterday that she saw a therapist for the first time. And I think it's so important that we talk about this as like, yeah, this is okay and normal and healthy and beautiful, and it's a gift to yourself. And so I am curious if that was ever a barrier for you when you went to see if, did you feel any certain kind of way about it, or were you like, oh no, I need this? You know what I mean?
I knew I needed it. I fought against it, and it was a
Mm,
personal battle. It was no one telling me you can't do it or don't do it, but I think it was a product of
mm,
just years of like, do I really need this, right?
mm,
My family, like, they never spoke one way or the other, to be honest. But again, it wasn't pitched in the way as I shared, where it's, if you break your bones, you got to go to the hospital and check yourself
right.
out, right, just to make sure you're okay. Same thing, we go through so many things in life that we're not the experts, right? And it's always good to have. There was this photo I saw around therapy where the person has all these yarns of color above their head, and it's a little thought bubble, right? And the yarns all mixed up together like this. And then the therapist has the yarn, and she's spooling it by color and
Mm,
helping the individual really try to organize their thoughts, because sometimes we can catastrophize things. Sometimes it's not the way we saw something. Sometimes there are just so many layers of how things happen in our lives that I think it's great to get another perspective,
mm,
and we may not always agree with it, right? But again, I've always come from the mindset of, if I have others that are experts, why wouldn't I tap into them, right?
right.
But I did struggle with it because, being in human resources, my biggest thing for many others was go get help with through therapy or through whatever it is, right? If you need to get healthier, find a fitness instructor, right? There's all these tools. But when it came to myself, I'm going, oh yeah, I should do the same, right? And that's something that took some work. But I realized that I wanted again, I had bigger dreams and bigger goals, but if I didn't focus on that, it was going to impede my growth. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, I went for it.
Oh, yes. So smart, and I think that, and personally, I had a mentality for the vast majority of my life, right? That I got to do it on my own, right? I got to figure stuff out and, spool the yarn myself,
Yeah.
and I really had to break like this idea that like I can't ask for support or that that there isn't another way. So I love just opening the door for people to hear that, like that if you're struggling, that absolutely there are resources to help you get out of your own, you know, pile of yarn that's super knotted up,
Mhm. It's an
and
investment.
what?
It's an investment in you.
Absolutely,
So,
absolutely. I think it's, and of course, coaching is, of course, vastly different. It's,
mhm.
coaching is forward looking, and it's not about understanding the why of, your behaviors and how you're thinking. But coaching hits the same barriers because people, they don't know exactly what it is, but also it's just another form of getting support.
Mhm.
Heaven forbid.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's what a great gift to yourself, and the best investment you can ever make is what I say is in yourself. Like that's the best bet ever because you can control you. You can't
Mhm.
control what anybody else
Right.
does, right? And I want to go back to something else that you said that I think is so powerful and important. When we talk about, especially earlier in our careers, and we have these like goals, right? And a lot of times they're wrapped up in titles or they're wrapped up in the function or whatever. And then at some point, I think many people, if we're really honest with ourselves and if we're really aware, we realize, oh shit, like this isn't what's making me happy.
Mhm.
Um, and I think we've talked about ego playing a role in all that. And I'm curious your perspective on like in your mind, like what's the difference between being ambitious, right, and career minded and letting your ego run the show? Like how do we help people to like pull that apart and say like is it healthy that this is like what you're going after or your come from place and going after that versus thinking about it differently?
Yeah, a lot of as I've been talking to a number of people that are out of jobs right now, right, in the
Mm,
Latina community, and going back to Priscilla, I had this role and I was the lead of X, Y, and Z, and it's
mm,
just you lose yourself a little bit when you're not in those places because you tend to define, and I did it myself, right? Your definition of who you are
mm,
connects to what you do for a living and what you do at work
mm,
or your title, your pay. And for me personally, and as I've spoken to a number of women, it's always going back to the whole notion of what's driving you behind all
mm,
this, right? And you've really got to be honest with yourself when nobody's in your head, you're thinking about it by yourself, and truly being honest with why do you want that next thing? Whether it's above, below, lateral, whatever the move is,
mm,
what is your why right behind that? And that's very hard for us to think about sometimes because in corporate America, and it's not right or wrong. It's just the way it's structured is, where's the next role? And thankfully, a lot of companies are also now looking at moves laterally, right? And so that's
mm,
a great thing because then that also changes the dynamic of what you do next and why. But for many companies, it's, what is that next role? What is you start off as an assistant and then a manager or a coordinator, and then you move up to a director and then a VP. But is that really what you want to do, or
mm,
is that what you've been conditioned to think about, right? And so I've been really working on myself of what is that next role and why do I want it? And so I've realized that at the end of the day, the next role that I do, whether it's in whatever organization it is, I really want to ensure that what I'm doing is making an impact, right?
mm,
And I will trust and I will also look at, right, do my research that I'm getting paid reasonably for what I'm doing, right? Competitively, I should say. But at the end of the day, is the work what I'm doing aligned to who I am, right?
mm.
And sometimes we just go with the motion and take the next role. And but is it really? Is it again? Why are you doing it, right? What's in? I will say too, as I was moving up, that I just I didn't have many hobbies. I was so focused on my job, and not because the company mandated that for me. By no means. If anything, it was me just loving what I did, but also understanding that it's not healthy to put everything in one place either, right? And to take some time to learn more about what excites you, where do you want to help
Mm.
more, and then that's actually why this past year I decided to leave my job and pursue different opportunities, and then my book was created, right? I built my book, which I still struggle saying today because it was a dream, right? And for it to become a reality, it's a few months fresh, and it's still something that I'm working at believing that this actually happened.
Yes, and I want to talk about the book. And right before we do, I just, I feel like I wish there was a megaphone to the world when you just said that about, right, like this idea that we, like, not attaching our identities to our careers and our jobs. Um, and that, as a career coach, I often come across people who they're so lost because they spent their whole life attaching their worth and their value to what they do and not who they are,
Yeah.
at the core, right? And so I think that's just such an important, like that. We're not taught, right? In terms of, when we talk about resilience today, resilience is understanding we are all multifaceted, right? And we are, we don't have to fit into boxes, and we can redefine ourselves every minute of the day, So, yeah, I just love what you were saying about, not attaching ourselves too much. And I think that's so beautiful because the community that you're building and the book that you wrote is all about advancing, women, Latinas in HR. And so it's just, yes, both of those messages are perfectly like amazing right now, because I think we don't know how to find that balance very well. So let's talk about your book and your community and where this passion came from, and what you are trying to leave behind with this.
Happy to. I am madly in love with our community. It started off as honestly just a passion project. When I was going through this moment of taking care of myself, I can't sit still, and many people know that about me. And they go, "Well, Priscilla, your pause, you actually did a book." And I go, "I know. I'm just wired differently, right?" But I knew that if I was taking a pause and
Yeah.
I wasn't going to be working, right? I was going to pursue an opportunity where I was giving back in a reasonable way with what I could do at the time, right? Because then you're not taking care of yourself, right? And that's when I connected with our amazing publisher, Fit Factor Media, and they opened the doors of mentoring me through what it could be like to publish a book, because I've never done this before, right? And I laugh because my family, I have different writers, my sister included, and for me to have a book before all of them, I'm just still, again, I still can't believe it. But that's where I feel that the power in knowing and following what you're passionate about and taking care of yourself comes in, because by doing those things, I had this space. I was in these spaces where I could create and had the right people around me to encourage me and share their knowledge with me to build something that wasn't even for me. It's for our community. And so now we have about 270 women connected on Facebook, all Latinas in HR, and supporters that aren't from the community but believe in what we're doing. And the call out is, that's what the book was, right? Is we had 20 women, amazing women that I did a lot of background research on, because again, I wanted this to be not a book of look at how amazing I am and all the awards and accolades. We don't need that, right? That's not what I think is important in life. So there's different levels of success, and that's more than anything. I wanted to show a platform of women that were willing to be vulnerable, that were willing to share their defining moments and how different things in their life could have skewed them one way or the other, or they did, right? They share that too. But the end result is still open, right? Their stories are still being made and created. And it's just a little snippet, I'd say maybe 7 pages worth per each author, right, of what their story is at a certain moment in time, and how resilience came from these defining moments, right? And how, and that's the other thing where I also wanted to create a platform where Latinas were heard and seen and can never go away in a good way, right? Where it's like, this is great stuff that we're not always hearing about. And to know that this book will forever be out there, and that maybe one day a student could be doing a book report on these 20 amazing women, and that this gift of a story will continue giving over years. That's what excited me. And so now we're at a place where we're already thinking about having another book next year and sharing more stories, right? Because this is the first. I say that these women were the lighting flame, right? And they just the first match. That there's so many other ways to fuel this. And so we'll definitely be continuing this. And I can't say enough how powerful everyone's story is. And it may not be for everybody, and I get that, but I truly feel like you'll inspire one person, and we've done our job, right? It was just that one person that you could have changed their life. And that's what we're trying to do, share our knowledge and our successes, and but through our learnings, through our defining moments of what happened, because nobody wants to hear about the amazing successes you've done. People can't relate to that.
Right.
Life is unpredictable, and when we go to school and then come out, or if you start working right away out of high school, we're not always prepared for what life's really going to bring you. Hence, someone very close to you passing away, and how do you work through that, right? So COVID is another example with the pandemic. We're all figuring it out, and we're realizing, wow, we're really human, right? We're all just trying to make life work. And but for me, it comes at a different level where it's like, yes, but what are we doing to give back, right? What is that legacy? And that's where I love connecting with these women and the other 200 plus that are joining us, because it starts there. And then my business side, right, where my career is now, how do we impact what we're trying to say around workforce, right? And how we're diversifying the workforce and growing, and not just retaining, but promoting, right, Latinas in HR, so that there's more visibility and representation, so that we reflect what the world looks like today.
Mm. Yes, all of oh my gosh, all of that. And I think it's interesting because um, there is this incredible need to see people
Mm-hmm.
in places that we want to be, right? However you identify, whatever in terms of like, oh, I see me there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I love that this book is bringing that to the forefront, because a lot of people aren't seeing us Latinas in HR, right? I mean, especially in senior roles. And so, oh yeah, they are out there. Oh shit, I can do this in my career. Like that, I am going to be the chief human resource officer. And on the other hand, because I feel like there's so much of paving the way that still needs to happen, unfortunately, because we're not where we need to be, that I think I love your perspective on this, that we also have to be able to imagine possibilities, because we may not exactly see how we identify in those places and spaces that we want to be. Um, and I'm curious, even in your own journey,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like how you stayed the course and inspired, and like believing that you could do anything in the spaces that you were in. Because like I
No,
said, I don't think we always see it.
no, we don't. And I grew up in a very predominantly Caucasian community growing up in the suburbs, right? I grew up in the suburbs of Chicago. I didn't really think much about it at the time. It just wasn't something that I thought of until later. I had a high school teacher, and I mentioned this in the book actually, where he's Puerto Rican descent, and said, something to me in Spanish and then asked me what my favorite foods were in Spanish. And I'm going, oh my gosh, I never really spoke Spanish in school, in high school especially, right? I just didn't. And he started sharing with me about his culture. And then I started lighting up, right? I'm like, oh, well, at home I eat enchiladas and this is what we do. And I listen to this music. And it was the first time that I started seeing this happen, right? Where what happened at home, I was bringing to school. And then he invited us to the U.S. Hispanic Leadership Institute conference that happens for high school students in Chicago. And I did not even know this world existed of bringing students together that are Latinos and focusing on careers. And I remember sitting in a huge auditorium looking at this businesswoman. I wish I could remember who she is today. I'm on this journey to find out where she is and who she is.
Oh my gosh.
I don't remember. But I remember she was up there in a business suit. And I remember she looked so put together, fantastic and real, right? And had long hair. As I look at myself today, I'm like, she had long hair. And I looked at her and I go, oh my gosh, I love what she's saying in the sense of, don't be a statistic and try not to be and work hard and move forward. And you do not have to be a product of your past, right? Good or bad, you can define a new journey for yourself. And I remember being so young, maybe 17 at that point, 16 at that point, and sitting there and going, I remember parts of what she said, but more than anything, I remember being like, I want to look like her when I get that older. And in the sense of, I want to be on a stage like that someday, and I want to inspire others, but I got to do the work, right? I've got to create, what am I doing? What am I focusing? And I forgot about that for so many years. I honestly, until I started writing, to be honest, for my chapter, and I was being asked like where did this stem from? And that's where, for me, even more, I realized that it's so important to see different people, different backgrounds represented, because I don't know if I would be where I am today if it wasn't for her and the many other people that have been in my path that have encouraged me. Because I think they're like seeds, right? They plant these seeds and then you water them and they grow, and all of a sudden you're around a forest and being like, look at this is amazing. And so that's with her that I remember it. If anything, it was, oh, I can do these things, right? Someone's done it. I don't know what she's doing for her career, but I love what she's projecting. And then later on, it's, oh, I will go to college, right? There's no question about that now. But how do I continue, right? Because I was ready to call it quits quite a few times. And then following that, it's when you start working and what you learn there and the people that are around you that can either support you or hinder you. And I've been very, very fortunate to work at organizations where they're very supportive of my career, and that's why partially why I've been where I've been. But what was always unfortunate for me as I moved up was just not seeing the representation of others like me, and I kept believing like I can't be the only one. I can't. That makes no sense to me. I can't be the only one out there. There's got to be other people like me that want to make a difference, that can and have, and we just don't know of each other. So I waited about 5 years before I even did the book. I had that idea for about 5 years and just sat on it thinking, one day I'll do it, right? One day.
And why not during a pandemic, right?
Exactly, right? I got the time. It was a time where I realized and it wasn't because of the pandemic. It was more of I had the time due to the pandemic, right? And I had the time I think I also had done the work on myself, where I then now was able to listen to the stories of other women and pick the right stories and the right leadership qualities, because I didn't want other people like me, again, diversify it a little bit more. And I wanted to hear women from all different countries of Latin America that didn't have the Mexican American lens that I have, right? That were coming from Colombia, that maybe started their career here later on from Venezuela, or again, just everyone has a different experience. And so that's what I wanted to portray, so that we can change the stats, right? Which I learned very early on. We don't have to be a statistic, but as you know, I don't like sitting around and complaining about, oh, the numbers are so low and, we've got to make a change. I agree with that. Yes, we do. But I'm a very action oriented person. And so that's actually why we did the book. And now we have a community, Latinas in HR, on Facebook for now, because we're trying to connect one another, to share these best practices and talk to one another and coach each other, just as many other communities do. But we just never have done that for ourselves in the HR space. Maybe one on one, right? But there has not been a grander focus on it. And it's exciting. It's really exciting to see, just again, all women coming together from all backgrounds to support Latinas moving forward in HR.
Yes, it's so beautiful. And I think you mentioned even with this community it sounded like you have Latinas and allies in there
Mm-hmm.
as well. Yeah, and I want to talk about that
Yep.
because I think that there are people that can get confused or unsure about if they're welcome in spaces to be an ally, right? Because like you, I'm like, don't tell me about your values of inclusivity and all that shit. Show me what you're doing. I mean, I'm sorry, I get a little, it's like if you really believe it, what are you doing? Because like you said, in so many of the stories you share, right, we have such a powerful ripple impact,
Mm-hmm.
you know? Are we taking the minute to say, like, hey, can I be a mentor? Are we taking a minute to say, I believe in you? Are we taking a minute to say, like, let me get in these spaces and be proactive? So what is your thoughts on that? And like, what do you want, like, allies who maybe are not Latinas to know about participating in spaces designed to support Latinas?
Yeah, part of the initial piece when I hear, I don't know if I'm welcome there, right? Or I don't know. And I'm going, it really comes down to, what is your intention? Why are you
Mm,
there? And I've spoken to a few HR leaders to talk with them about what their goals are for this year, right? I think what you focus on and you measure, you actually
mm,
will change. And so I ask, what is the makeup of your HR team today? And they don't
mm,
always want to answer, right? And I go, free of judgments. I know the stats. It's
you're right.
4%. We've got 4% of board seats held by Latinas. We've got 4% of executive positions at Fortune 100 companies that are Latinas. I know the stats, so you're not going to surprise me when you say we've got one or two or three, right? And that they're in lower positions. I'm not surprised. The next question though is, what are you doing, especially right now? This is the key time
Mm,
during this pandemic where we're going to have a moment where hiring is going to kick in, and I believe it.
mm,
It's going to happen at some point. But this is your moment, right? As an organization, nonprofit, for profit, corporation, government, whatever it is, this is your time to really decide on how are we going to impact that change.
yeah,
And if for allies and corporations and others that are thinking of this down the road, positions don't open one day to the next, right? In some places they do, but for large openings where you have 50 to 200 to more open positions, there's a strategy that goes behind that. I worked in talent acquisition, so I know you don't just hire people from today to tomorrow unless you have extreme growth, right? And so there's a strategy. What is in that strategy, right? And so if you think that coming to this community, or whatever community, to be very honest, and saying we have 5 positions, we want to hire you today, it's an investment, especially with our community. It's all about relationship building, and it's not just about filling numbers. And
mm,
once, and here's the biggest thing where I'm like, yes, I know now 270 Latinas in HR that are rock stars. But if I want to refer them onto whatever organization, one, I want to know how long they're going to be there for, right? What you're going to do to develop
mm,
them and grow them and promote them. It's not just filling in a position to impact a stat.
mm.
And as a true HR professional, I'm looking at retention, right, and development, and that goes for my community as well. And so for allies, I would say the biggest thing to think about and do is, what are you doing today, right? And that doesn't mean you have to continue doing that forever. Um, Are you investing? And I have my lens of being Latina on today, right? I can take the lens off and put different lenses on it. So I put the lens of my Latina community and say, how many Latinas are on your team? Of those that are on your team, how are you developing them? And are you setting them up for success? Are you giving them stretch assignments, not to give them more work? You truly see where there's certain gaps, and you're using these stretch assignments to develop them. And then what's the road to promote them? We are very loyal at holistically as a community, but things are changing, right? In the sense of we are loyal, but we are very loyal to our families too. And so if we need to move on because there's a better opportunity, it's going to hurt, right? But if it's going to benefit our families, we will run into it in a heartbeat. And so that's the piece where I would say with allies, join the conversation, be part of it, be with us. And use your skills and knowledge. Get uncomfortable. It's okay. And that's what we're building in this community, where we're not here again to fight with other communities and say what you're doing, what you're not doing. I leave that to other platforms, because I really want us to be more actionable in the sense of this is who we have, this is what we're doing, this is where we're going. And if you're willing to be there with us and want to learn and grow with us and get to know these women, let's do it. And so thankfully, we've had a few organizations that are aligned to that, right? That are publicly sharing their goals, are publicly sharing where they're at today, and are now wanting to publicly share their support of our community. So I'm like, let's do it. It takes time, and we're looking for people that are not looking to have this be a 1-year relationship, right? It's a growing partnership.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, so important, all of these facets that you're mentioning. And I also want to just say hello and hi to everybody who's been joining in the last 10 minutes. It's so awesome to have you guys on here. We got Vanessa and Irma and Eden and some folks that I'm recognizing here. And, you know, in my experience, because I worked for a Hispanic organization with a lot of Hispanics working in that organization, and I got this sense, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I got this sense, to your point about loyalty, that women were staying there far beyond what was beneficial to them anymore. And it was like driving me crazy. I was like, oh my God, you need to get out of here. Like, this isn't for you anymore. Like, so hello, Eden. Yes, I'm glad you took a break from school. He's a gemologist, just like
Oh, thanks for
beautiful, like
sharing us.
healer, and just such depth understanding in the world of gemology. But anyway, um, yeah. So how do you break that? How do you help Latinas in particular, right? See, oh my gosh, honey child, it is time for you to go. Like, this place isn't serving you anymore. They're not moving you up. You got to move it on. Like, what do you do to like right to, it's because it's part loyalty. I think it's part probably fear and risk avoidance. And so, like, what do you have to say about that?
Yeah, one of the things I've been talking a lot more about is having the courage to do new things, right? And finding and for some we have that courage, right? And I think for some of us over time, if you have a family like mine, where if I made any mistakes, you get slapped on the hand, right, pretty badly. And after so many slaps, you're like, I'm not going to make a mistake anymore. And I think that's where the fear kicks in, right? Even as we become adults, and a lot of times I go back to, what would you have done if you were a kid? Not even thinking about, and I know for some of us that's like, oh yeah, okay, Priscilla, but you're fearless when you're a kid. You jump off balconies, you cut your knees, you scrape yourself, you you get sprains. And so a lot of the times it's thinking of, what are these goals that you're looking for? What do you want in life? What are you looking for? And not thinking about the people. We forget that, and I loved the last leaders that I had at Hyatt, because they said, Priscilla, we know it's time for you to move on. Like, you're saying that with us, right? And I go, yeah, it's time for me to move on. And it was so hard. I couldn't, after working there for 13 years, it was so hard for me to say, I think it's time for me to move on. And she goes, but Priscilla, even if you move on, the door is always open. You could always come back down the road if it makes sense, but you'll always have the relationships. And everyone would tell me that you'll always have those relationships. And when I left, I realized, you know what, I was there because of the amazing people, right, that I was
Mm.
connected to. And those relationships don't go anywhere. And some of them still work there, some of them don't. But we tie who these people are with a company when it's, hopefully you're working for an organization that is aligned to your purpose and who you are. Um, and with what I was doing, that was the case. But I kept thinking, I can't leave. I don't want to lose these people. And at the end of the day, those individuals will hopefully stay in your life if they're meant to be. And they were. And actually we have a few in the book that are mentioned, like Edith and Sonia and Valerie. I worked with them all in the past before, and we're forever connected now through having written a book. And so I would say really find what it is that helps you build courage to make decisions. For me, it's my community, as I mentioned. For me, it's also thinking back of the whys of what I'm trying to do. And we all have to make decisions for different reasons, right? Sometimes in our life, we make a decision for a career or a job because of where we're at financially. Maybe we need to make it because of the benefits. Sometimes we make it because of the time, right? The role is maybe lower, but we need that time back, that flexibility. And so that's the piece where I go, well, you really think about why you're in your role and what you're getting from it. And just be careful to not give everything out. Hold something, a little something for yourself, because that's what's going to always sustain, right? And you can have both. I think we talked about, you put this in the ad for today's conversation, where a lot of times we hear, you have to do this and then you have to choose one or the other, your business and then working for a corporation. I think the right corporations are going to start embracing and seeing that through the pandemic, we've had to be creative, right? We all have our businesses, we're all doing something, but it doesn't have to compete, right? And with the right organization, they'll see that as a highlight, as something like, wow, she's entrepreneurial, she's creative, she can think this way, and she can do this, right? And she can build plans and talk about talent management and recruit. And so that's my hope is that we see that growing more down the road, because there's been way too many of us that have been impacted by the pandemic, and I'm hopeful we'll be able to come back in a better place to have both, right? To have it all.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And and also I just want to, anybody who's watching now, feel free to pop a question. You have a HR like superstar executive here. You can ask her anything about her journey or anything in the realms there. But what you said just woo, it was like, oh, the universe is at play, because I was just having, conversation with a client where they left so much off of their resume, like the side hustle stuff, like, even old jobs. And it's like, man, how can we own all of our truth and put it out on the table and say, look, XYZ company, if you don't like that I have a side hustle, then this isn't for me anyway,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then you more easily find a place that fits, because they're going to value that and ask about it and be curious and intrigued. um, but I'm curious, actually, this topic of like authenticity, right? In these spaces in which we don't always feel welcome, um, and so how do you balance, right? Like, um, finding a place that's for you, while being yourself, and even though they may not be 100% there yet, because I think there's still so much work to be done. And also, and there's another question here, so we'll get to this next question. But yeah, like how do you, the whole code switching, right? Like how do you find a place where you don't have to do that, and you can just be you and like be yourself? Like, what are your thoughts, especially as an HR, and knowing that there's certain cultural norms and all that within organizations? How do you navigate all that?
Yeah, I mean, the reality is you have to also think about how a corporation thinks, right? I mean, they also don't want you coming in and taking all their information. I mean, it makes sense, right? And then running off and then doing your business. And so it really comes, again, it comes down to the why are you doing this, right? Why do you want to work for a company? Why do you want to keep your side hustle? Why do you, or make that your full-time hustle? Like what are the reasons behind it? And recruiters, having been one myself, we can read through what you're telling me, right? It's funny because people may think, oh no, I've got it down, you can't pick up anything. And I go, no, I can pick up very well if you're lying to me, or if you're trying to create, right, a story that I want to hear. And it's funny because a lot of people think we don't pick that up, and that's why we are the subject matter experts in people. We know that it's something. Again, we've asked so many questions in interviews. We can pick up that authenticity. And so with the way that I've shared with many companies as I've started doing my own search is I never had hobbies. I really didn't growing up. I loved doing a lot of different things, but I never had one hobby. And what I'm doing with Latinas in HR is has now become my hobby. It's in the evenings I'm doing this and I love it. Some people plant trees. Some people work at soup kitchens. Some people do boutique things, right? And some people love bargaining online and do Poshmark. You know, there's so many things that because we're multifaceted people, as you said from the very beginning, that when I share with companies that I'm interviewing, it's this is what I love doing. I used to put all my face and everything into my work, and now I'm doing it to help my community.
Right.
And that's what I love. I love being connected to the authors. I love how they've embraced what my crazy ideas and saying, yes, Priscilla, we trust you. Let's move on forward. And so that's the piece where it's not an easy task, because then you also have to be prepared for, there may be many companies that aren't okay with that. And not that you need to sell your soul, right? But again, you take things on for different reasons. And maybe the time is, you maybe do have to put your side hustle aside and follow this because there's an immediate need for whatever you have. Or maybe you can prolong it and do both. Or maybe you're at a place where, you're maybe not pursuing your full-time hustle because you're scared, right? You're scared of the success. I don't know. There's so many pieces to it, right? And so it's really going back to the beginning of, again, why do you want both? Why do you want one or the other? Because I truly believe that teams can pick up on why you're doing it.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, it makes so much sense. I think that yeah, this is a big thread of what you're saying, right? Is always intentionality, right? And I think even tying back to the bigger theme of our defining moments, right, are driving our resilience. And so these things that we're pursuing can help to tell our stories in more compelling ways and own our uniqueness. So I love that that contribution and really owning what we need to in order to get to where we want to be and in the spaces that we want to be in. And I want to also bring to light this question, which is really, really good. Where does somebody with PTSD find a safe place for full-time employment? Right,
Mm.
which I think is in the same realm of how do you find places that accept you and welcome you and take you for all the beauty that you are, regardless of labels or challenges or what have you. Like, do you have any advice in that realm?
Yeah, as I think through that question, a lot of it is I want to say that first, it's, are you doing the work personally, right, with your PTSD? I mean, that's for me. I'm like, as I went through my own traumas, it's like, are you doing the work for yourself? Because regardless of where you look, you're with yourself always, right? So are you taking care of yourself? And the next part, which I shared, actually, it's a question that tends to come up a lot, is, where do I find my space, regardless of what I have, right? Where do I find my space? And a lot of it is going back to, what is it that you're spending your time doing, and what spaces are you putting yourself out in? And so there's great organizations out there that are doing a lot of work with all different communities, right? And you can tell a lot from an organization based on the partnerships that they have and what they're doing in different communities, and not just that they have a partnership, but what they're actually doing within the community. And I've started noticing that there's quite a few organizations that are focusing a lot on mental health and creating resources for that. And so if that's something that's very important to you that they embrace, right? Part of it is, like I said, what are you doing? And then also the other half is doing the research of what organizations are are in this space and comfortably in this space, right? Because I don't believe a company is meant to be there to be our answer, resolution to what we're going through. But I do believe that the right and the purposeful organizations are comfortably in these spaces, right? And so, you know, wherever the PTSD came from, right? Think of, are they in those spaces too, right? And are they truly driving forward a change? So I mean that's the other piece. It really, I mean, it's so one on one, that question, right? That's it's also, I have so many more questions on top of the one, but I would say it really comes down to where, again, where are you spending your time focusing, and are those organizations in those spaces that will support? And it's not easy. It's not easy to find. And if it were, then everybody would be flocking there, right?
Mm.
And so it does require research. It does require asking around. It does also require you to be in different spaces to keep growing.
Yeah, I would just build on that too to say, right, like I think what you're saying is look for the proof points,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like of what these organizations are saying they value and how they value humans, period,
Mm-hmm.
right? And beyond even like partnerships, like is there action? Is there action? Is there participation and things like that? I think really, I think you have to interview companies as much as they're interviewing you to find
Oh,
out, is this a place like for me? And be bold and be confident that you have that right, and you should. And actually, when you do it well, it only makes you uh, look like an even better candidate because they know you're doing your homework, because you don't want to just go anywhere and be a number either. You want to go and be somewhere you want to stay. Um, so I think it really can work to your advantage when you're asking the right questions about the kind of values and beliefs that organizations have and how they execute against that. Um,
100%.
yeah.
It's the values, right? It comes down to the values, the mission, what their actual goals are, what they're measuring. And you don't always find that on their website right away, right? You can find the mission and vision and purpose and all that, but the actual goals, dig into their annual reports, dig into their corporate or social responsibility reports, their DEI reports. And if they don't have them, that's it's a sign, right? It's like, well, why don't they have one, right? And many of the really great companies are starting to publicize that more and more because candidates are asking, and board members are now wanting to know that information too, right? And there's a stronger sense of responsibility on what we're measuring in organizations, because they impact a lot with what we do as in our economy and just where people are moving, right? So, but at the end of the day, like you said, Tuska, it's, are you aligning yourself to a company that has the same vision, mission, and values as you? And if they do, then my hope is that the PTSD never comes up and as a question. It shouldn't come up as a question. Honestly, it's more of, you know, that's just something you have, and if you want to disclose it, you can. But if in an organization that values all people, you wouldn't need to, right? It's just, again, you're working through that, and the organization values you for the what you bring. And at the end of the day, can you do the job? That's all. You know, that's really what they want to know. Are you able to do the work of what's being applied for? They don't need to know all the details of your background. But I would want to work at a place where I don't have to cover any of that, right? That
Mm,
I can truly be me, and it's just an added value of who I am, right?
yeah. Oh my gosh, I feel like I need a part two. I need a part two of this because we've only scratched the surface on corporate culture and all of that package. But you know, we've covered a lot of different things today. I love it. I thank you for sharing your story, and I know you do that in your book as well. And you know, I'm curious, you know, as we're, you know, wrapping up, like, is there anything that you felt really compelled to share that we didn't cover, like messages that you want people to know right now, just whatever's coming up for you?
I would say right now is a great time for everyone to learn more about each other, right? With what we learned, unfortunately, through the acts of that prompted, right, Black Lives Matter and with George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, and it's just that was a really tough time for me personally. Just having friends and people that were really impacted with that, specifically in the Black community. And so I thank the Black community for really what they're doing in bringing awareness and education and action. And I think that right now is a time for us to continually work on ourselves. And I think that's regardless of what has happened, right? I think that's something that we should always be doing. I loved your question about the component of what can we do as allies, because we're all allies in some sense or form, right? And so me as an ally to other communities too, what can I do? What can I grow and learn? And so, I mean, the last thing I would leave everyone is I'd be remiss if I didn't say join our community to learn, right, about what we go through, but not as a our life is horrible and we're going through all these things. It's more of like just grow your knowledge and education on the questions that we ask each other and how it is that you can continue to be an ally, and us too as Latinas and Latinos. How can we continue to be allies for other communities, right? And so constantly try to encourage yourself and challenge yourself to learn more of others, and that's something what I'm trying to do myself, right? And it's easy for us to, and it's comfortable for us to stay within our community. And that's actually something I just shot a couple of messages to a couple of ladies that are in DEI, is I don't want to lose sight of, yes, I focus on the Latina community. That's one lens I'm looking through, but how do I keep working on myself, right? To do the work, so that way, while I'm focusing here, I'm also not forgetting how can we partner with other communities, so that way we just continue to elevate one another, right? As we're elevating our own community. So I would say keep learning, keep growing, keep getting uncomfortable, but boldly be uncomfortable, not just like tiptoe in there. And try to find communities where they welcome the hard questions, or they welcome it being uncomfortable, because that's where you'll grow. That's really where you'll find a space where you can ask questions that you maybe wouldn't be able to ask at work or with certain circles that you're in, that will give you a different perspective.
Oof. Amazing words to close on for sure. And the work never ends. I love that. Going places where they encourage difficult conversations, getting uncomfortable. And it sounds like there's some desire to connect with you offline. If people want to connect with you, what is the best place that they can do that
Yeah,
if
so
you're
you
open
can
to it?
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn. Tuska did a beautiful blog on me. Thank you so much, Tuska. That was beautiful. And so you can feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn, or through Instagram. Send me a DM, and we'll get connected. I'll respond via email, or we'll get on a phone call. But yeah, a lot of it is again, how do we continue building this community, right, and building others while we're doing that. So I thank you so much for your time, for bringing me on here, and as always, I always have a great time chatting with you.
Oh my gosh. Well, no,
I love your Tuesday chats.
oh, thank you. I appreciate you so much. And I just am such a fan of what you're doing. I'm going to like join the community right now. Like, yes, I'm doing it. Like, yeah, so this is perfect. And thank you for your time, your inspiration. I mean, you wrote a book, you're like doing the work on yourself, you're like advocating. I was just like, yes, 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 all of that. And if there's ever anything I can do to continue to support you, please don't hesitate to let me know. Um, and yeah, just I love all the support that you've gotten today too. Like so many, hopefully you've been reading the love here. Um, and yeah, some pride here, some pride call out from your friends and sisters. So yeah, so hopefully more to come. Book number 2, we'll do it again.
We'll do it again. I will say it's coming out in Spanish and later on this year. So again, something new, something different, but we know we need it in the hand of our community. I had to throw that out there. I almost forgot.
No, that's awesome. That's great. I gotta start, picking up my Spanish lessons again.
There
So
it is. Okay. One chapter at
inspiration.
a time.
Yes, one chapter at a time. All right, well, have an amazing day and lots of love to you. And thanks again for coming on the show.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for joining today. Have a great day.
Yes. Ciao for now.
Bye.
Bye.